Good evening. We want to welcome you to our April the 15th Board of Commissioners meeting. We appreciate each of you who are in attendance at our meeting. We appreciate your interest in county government, and we would also like to welcome those who are viewing us by way of television. I shall now call this meeting to order, and we shall have our roll call.
I can see it on my screen. You're all present. Ms. Ward just needs to confirm.
Okay, thank you. We shall now have our invocation and pledge, and Commissioner Ward is going to do the invocation, and Commissioner Webb is going to do the pledge. May we all stand, please.
Most Heavenly Father, please be with us all tonight as we listen to the concerns of the county. Be with all of our citizens as they listen in and see us make our decisions. We ask this in thy name. Amen.
Amen.
Let's face the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what I'd like to do is, because of people that are in attendance, take under public hearings, move number 3 forward to
To the first item.
the first item.
Okay, is the one who made the motion and
Yes,
the
sir.
second
That's
okay
good.
with that? Okay, well, let's vote.
And I can see on my screen that it's all yes.
Okay, so the first item on our agenda is a public hearing, and this is amendments to the Pitt County Subdivision Ordinance, and Mr. Rhodes is going to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. If you'll allow me to quickly get our order changed here for the public hearings. Okay. Your first item tonight for public hearing are amendments to the subdivision ordinance, and this deals with street maintenance. You may recall back in December we were before you with a recommendation from the planning board to go back and make some changes in our subdivision ordinance to expressly state the developer's responsibility in maintaining streets. That has taken place. This is our second phase of amendments where we're going through and now also from the planning board bringing forward a recommendation for financial guarantees for some of these streets. So with that tonight we'll be looking at, actually you'll hear me speak mostly about proposed public road rights-of-way. Our language is written for both public and proposed private streets. So you'll see that information in just a little while. We also have an attendance tonight, kind of as another resource that's been before our planning board. Woody Jarvis, our district engineer for DOT, is in attendance if you have some specific questions about DOT's requirements for accepting streets. There is a petition process. Most of you are aware once roads are developed, they have to meet a minimum development or density requirement before they're taken over by DOT, and that's through a petition process typically handled by the developer. However, homeowners can also petition. What we've seen over the past several years are an increasing number of complaints by residents in certain developments. These developments could have been developed back in late 80s, early 90s, on into the mid 90s. And again, we do not have a particular way of ensuring other than requesting that the developer go out, make these improvements, turn the streets over to DOT. So again, the street maintenance requirements are something that were looked at as part of this. Kind of leading up to this, we went out and did an assessment of all the proposed public streets in the county back last summer. And we were somewhat surprised with the results of this, and you can see on the screen right now, these are some of the proposed public streets that we've seen in some of the developments. All said, we've got about 35 miles of proposed public street road right-of-ways, and they're in various sorts of repair or disrepair. And as you can see on the screen now, according to our assessment, about 8%, about 3 miles in total, are in poor condition, right at 35%, or 12.5 miles in fair condition, and the remainder, well over a half, are in new or in good condition. And of course, the ones that we're hearing from are primarily those in the poor condition roadways, and we're bringing this language before you tonight for your consideration. Again, back in December, we fine-tuned our development regulations to speak more closely about the road maintenance requirements by the developers, and also what actually constitute these violations. Potholes in the road, fail in the drainage system, a few other items that constitute violations with the subdivision ordinance. This second phase is specific to looking at, in future subdivisions, if there is a problem and the county has to become involved, that there is actually a financial guarantee set aside expressly for those purposes. So again, we're looking to prevent and correct maintenance problems in the future and minimize and eliminate the burden on homeowners for the repairs to these publicly dedicated streets. And with that, not only our assessment, but the citizens' complaints and also the planning board recommendation, we've got a set of amendments tonight for your consideration dealing with the financial guarantees. It is pretty lengthy. I won't read it verbatim, but there are several sections that have been added or amended in the ordinance to actually speak towards the road maintenance guarantees. First would be Section 148, and this gives a requirement that in any case a financial guarantee is going to be required either for a public street that's intended to be taken over by DOT for maintenance responsibilities, or for a homeowners association in the case of a public or in case of a private road. And what you'll see under the financial guarantee section is also the amount that's required. In this case, we're proposing 25%. We looked at other ordinances from around the state, and there was a range. Typically, most of them were around the 15% range. So I will say we're a little bit higher than some of the others, but at the same time, we've also heard comments that 25% may not be enough. So this is kind of a compromise as far as the 25%. There were some other options that we looked at, not only just the financial guarantee, but other counties actually withheld building permits. In that case, when a development reached a magical percentage of development, 75% in most cases, permits were withheld until the roads were taken over by DOT. We had a concern with that, both at the staff level and at the planning board level. We felt like developers could sell those individual lots to homeowners or prospective home builders, and that person may be the one that would be penalized in a situation like this instead of the developer. If they hit that magical 75% line, we would withhold the building permit on them, not necessarily the developer. So we went with the financial guarantee of 25%, and that is of the construction cost overall. Probably most of you are going to ask, what are the construction costs? What we're looking at is about $100 per linear foot. So you can do your calculations off that. That is for the ditch section. For curb and gutter section, usually about $140 per linear foot. So depending on if you got a half a mile, quarter of a mile, whatever, you can do your calculations based off that. Take 25% of that total amount, and that's what we'd be looking at as a financial guarantee. The financial guarantee, again, deals with all the improvements within that road right-of-way. It's the roadside ditches, if that's the way it's developed. It's the curb and gutter, if that's the way it's developed. It's the road structure, it's the base course, it's all things involved within that road right-of-way. What are the acceptable forms? This is per state statute. State statute allows for a number of different options for acceptable financial guarantees, and they're all listed within this section. And they range from letters of credit to cash escrows to cash that we would hold as long as the ordinance dictates. The certification and release, again, once the streets are taken over by DOT, we want to get some certification to that effect, and at that point in time, we would release the funds. In the case of a private road, we'd also want some certification that the duly enacted homeowners association was in place to accept the maintenance responsibility. The maintenance, again, all the improvements within the road right-of-way would be the responsibility of the developer, or once it's turned over, would go to the Department of Transportation or to the homeowners association in the case of a private road. The maintenance violations, I mentioned that earlier. That's a section that's already been included in the ordinance, and if staff notices that upon a complaint, we would notify the developer, give them a specific time frame to get those in place, those corrections made, and if not, that is a trigger that we could then go call on a portion, whatever portion of the financial guarantee, to make those improvements. Could be potholes, could be drainage, could be some other situations. So with that information, this is language that has been reviewed, tweaked a bit by both legal, planning staff, as well as our planning board, and at a public hearing on March the 20th, it was a split vote, 6-2. The planning board did offer a favorable recommendation for this language to be included in the ordinance. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for our public hearing tonight.
Very good. Thank you, James. I now declare the public hearing open. And is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this recommendation? In favor of the recommendation. Okay.
First of all, I don't want TV land to get y'all too mixed up.
And you are who? That's Bill Clark, right? Well, Mr. Clark, I don't want you to get this mixed up because the email you sent us said gentleman. And I bet you I was the only one that responded and said, thank you very much for your comments. No, I'm teasing. That's fine. It happens all the time, even up here.
So give
I
your
was
name.
in a hurry. In fact, I sent two.
That's fine.
I sent one, but it had been complete. Anyway, my name is Bill Clark,
And your address.
and my address is 200. My business address is 200 East Arlington Boulevard.
Thank you.
My company is Bill Clark Homes, and I am also a developer. And I want, first of all, commend James and his staff for addressing this issue, because it is a problem. And I commend the county commissioners for looking into and doing something about it, because it's been a problem for a long time. And I think that even though I'm for what you're doing, I would like to see it modified a little bit so that I think it would be workable for the developer and for the county and for the citizens. It works for me because what I will do is I will have all private roads starting out. And then, once I get my number of houses built and sold and occupied on the street, then I'll petition the state for maintenance. What I want to suggest to you all is, why don't y'all fix the whole problem at one time by combining the two? In other words, what I would like to see you do is make it where a homeowners association, first of all, the developer would have to get a letter from DOT once he puts his improvements in, that the development is constructed according to DOT standards and will be accepted into the state system once the wide number of homes are on the street. That clears you with DOT. It assures you that the development is done the way it's supposed to be. And that's the most important thing. That's the first and the most important thing of the whole deal. If you don't do it right, it don't matter what you do, it's going to be a mess. Then I would make it a rule that I guess somebody from the county would maybe have to do some inspections. You do inspections on the streets now when they're under construction? Does the county engineer? Okay, so you get an engineer certification. And that's probably good enough, because engineers are not going to certify it. They'll certify that the streets are installed according to the standards of DOT. That gets you to the point, and then I would suggest that every subdivision would have a homeowners association established, legal entity, so that it is a legal entity, so that somebody can use it down the road. It gives you a couple of things that you don't already have. First of all, right now you're not doing anything that makes sure that the streets are acceptable, built by DOT standards. And second of all, you don't have a vehicle right now to get yourselves out of the mess you're in, because there's no vehicle. The homeowners association will give you that vehicle, because even if the developer dies or whatever happens to him, the people that own the lots or the houses in the subdivision would have the ability to assess lot owners to do whatever it takes to get the streets accepted. They would be doing that if they were private streets to begin with. They would have to do that to improve their own streets. So that's what I mean by piggybacking it a little bit to get you results that you want. And the reason I say this is because if you go out there, and I don't know of any county, and I work in several counties, that require 15% cash deposit or escrow for street maintenance. And the other options that you're saying are not there anymore. You cannot get a letter of credit from a bank for this. No bank is going to give you a letter of credit to do this, because there's no time limit. They have no date in the future when it'll expire. And they have no way to know how much do they charge the developer for it. You can't get a bond. No bonding company would bond this, because there's no end date. You got to have an end date. So the only alternative the developer would have would be to put up cash. Well, that's a pretty big burden for a developer. And if you want to stop development, this is one good way to do it. I would think that, to give you an example, I'm doing my first county subdivision in about 10 or 15 years on Portertown Road. And I'm slipping in under this ordinance, but I'm still do the same thing anyway. But it's about an $800,000 deal. So
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for him to be able to continue.
You're looking at a couple of $100,000 almost to be put in escrow over who knows how long. Because the problem you got is DOT is not going to accept the street until it is enough people on the street. So there's no way for you to determine when that date's going to be. It could be 2 years. It could be 5 years. It could be 20 years. You don't know. So therefore, it's a tough thing to get your arm around. That's why somebody has to be responsible. And the people, and if you're going to allow private streets anyway, then that's the easiest way to go, to make it private. And then if the guy wants to do it and put the association in place, and then if the guy wants to go get the DOT to accept it, he goes and does his job. Then the people have, they're the ones that have a vehicle. Then if something happens, the developer's not gone or whatever happens, then they can assess the lot owners to do whatever it takes to get the streets accepted by the state. So you got your first thing, you got your streets put in the right way, which is the most important thing, and then you got your vehicle to go forward from there. Now, as I sent the email out this today, and to each of you, probably not as clear as I would like for it to be, but again, I would like for you, it may sound like I was not for the ordinance. I think the ordinance is a great idea. I really do. I think that you're addressing a problem that's crucial. I think that Randy would vouch for. There's a lot of this going on in the county today. In fact, I had a couple of my subdivisions that somehow or another didn't get the streets accepted. I had one that was 30 years old, and I think I got a call from the county and said, hey, you got a subdivision that's part of the streets are not accepted. And I didn't know it, and we did everything. I promise you, we did everything we were supposed to do to get it accepted. It just got lost somewhere. I'm not blaming DOT. I'm just saying it did get lost. I mean, we used to get everybody to sign at closing. When they closed their house, they would sign a petition to get the streets accepted. Because back then, you had to get the homeowners had to sign to get the streets accepted. So I think that if you try to come up with a system that will be more equitable to both the developer and to the homeowners, I think that this would be a better system. I think that you will not discourage development. You increase your tax base. Otherwise, if you pass this ordinance, you can bet your bottom dollar that development in the county will just about come to a stop. And I'm still for the ordinance. I'll take any questions.
Mr. Hammond?
Mr. Manager, I want to ask James a question. James, what guarantee does the homeowners have in a case where the developer does this before they move in, where the lots, where the curbings and gutters and road paving is done prior to them?
Typically in these situations, they are done beforehand. And what happens is there is a lag time. This is the real issue in the state of North Carolina, that DOT's requirements dictate that there has to be a certain density requirement within the subdivision before the streets can be petitioned for their acceptance. So it could be with the economy slowing down, we may be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years before we meet those requirements. The roads are deteriorating during that period of time. So that's the problem we're seeing, the lag time. They're built right. You got that lag period, and then they're petitioned for acceptance by DOT. Something happens in that time lapse, and it's usually not good.
Mr. James?
Bill, certainly I don't agree with you on going all the way with this ordinance. I think it's for the large developer. They can afford it. You cannot afford even 15%, the average person out here. What worries me is DOT. They're going to be harder and harder to take over these roads because our road system is already so big in North Carolina. And they don't have that much money, I don't believe, taken to do it. Rules and regulation will destroy development, in my opinion. I think you can overdo it. Oh, I agree with you. We need these roads, and they need to be paved. Home associations, to me, and I'm involved in it, but you get out here in the city of Greenville and you get a developed area, that home association can put any fee on you that they want to put. Of course, you know that. It can be $100 a month, or it can go up as high as $500 a month if they really, and on these roads, it's going to cause them go way up. And I want to know how you would, when you say home association, how you're going to do that. Who is going to control it? That's what worries me.
There's nothing in your ordinance that addresses that.
You're right.
The ordinance, it says that you can have a homeowners association to maintain the street,
Right.
or DOT.
But who's going to control it? I had a patient chop here one time.
It has to be
it was
the people that own the lot.
It was $100 a month, and it went on up to about $300 a month before you could bet it not, because of things such as what we were talking about. But I know where you're from, and I support that. But I believe the only way we're going to get this to work out is to have a special committee, to have not only the developer, but those people who own this property, because they're the ones trying to get money and sell it to make lots. Now, north of the river, we will have more problems than you will south of the river. And it's very simple. Why? You build much larger, more expensive homes over here than we do on north of the river. And those people over there, they could not do what you were talking about, Mr. Chairman. And I believe we're going to have to take and form a committee, work this thing out that so that it will be workable. Because I don't believe the way it is now, and even what you suggest, I don't believe it's workable that way for the average developer. For the real large developer, yes, they're going to have enough finances to take it and put that 15% down maybe. But we're talking about 25%, and they're going to want more than that. Let's face it. Because roads are very expensive. All you got to do is to go that $1 per linear foot, that would be $2 per linear foot, plus you're going to have a lot more than that, as James knows. That is a large amount of money. I don't know how much it would be for an acre, but my goodness, for 300 yards or something like that. And the other question that I had was these small units, such as 10, James, in my area, like we have 10 lots. Are you talking about going out and we're going to have to pave those lots that these people are putting in there at the beginning, getting the money for it, and so forth?
There are two different things. I don't want you to get confused. We also already allow for a financial guarantee for a developer to start selling lots after the final plat's approved. He's given 2 years to put the improvements in. It could be the construction of the street, for example, or any drainage improvements. So we already have that within our subdivision ordinance to allow that sale of lots to begin. Also, what we're proposing now would be in the case of a subdivision development that would require a street to be paved, there would also be an additional financial guarantee for that of 25%. So they already have one surety that we have in place for improvements to be installed. This is to ensure the maintenance of those public streets that are installed.
All right, and you mentioned that your gutters and so forth. That will have to be included in this. Is that correct?
Any improvements within that road right-of-way, because again, when DOT accepts that for maintenance, they will also maintain any of that, including the roadside ditches. So yes, it includes everything.
All right, while I'm talking, just for DOT's benefit, just at Welcome School, I've been trying to get for years as a development there. And I brought this out several times with the buses, and I rode it for years going to North Pitt as a shortcut. It was fixed so that DOT would take it over. I even talked to DOT, and it's been paved, but it has some potholes in it. But DOT will not take it over. I don't know why. We've tried it, but things such as that, when we can't even get them to take that over, how are they going to take all these miles of other roads? But anyway, I still think we need a committee that will meet and do what Bill is talking about and come out, because right now there's too much money involved especially for the small developer. And we don't want to cut those people out. They've got to make a living too, you know. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Colson.
Let me make one point on that, if it may. We're very fortunate in Pitt County that the DOT office here is very cooperative. I don't know about your particular situation, but I've never had a problem here getting the street accepted if I did what I supposed to do. Yeah. And that's good. I mean, because I've been in some counties that I'm telling you, it's a job over and over and over and over again to get them accepted, because I would think that DOT probably does, and I'm just saying, speculating, the DOT probably doesn't want the streets.
Oh, no, they don't want it. They're not
And
going to
the other
want
part
it.
about it makes it so sad. If you got give you an example of this place down in Country Place. Here's a street that ended with DOT maintenance. Right on the other side there's a house. Right on this side is a house inside the maintenance. That guy is paying the same amount of real estate taxes as the guy that's outside the maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a fair situation, not an equitable situation. I was talking to Tom today about a couple of things, and there's no way that you can make anything fail-safe, unfortunately. I think what you have to do is give people the opportunity to be able to solve their problem. And I think this, what we just outlined, would be able to do that. Let's take another example. Why don't you do something about septic? You got more septic tank problems in this county than you do street problems. So you're going to go back and say, okay, we're going to have an ordinance that makes sure that somebody guarantees that all septic tanks will work forever? I'm saying you just can't guarantee everything. I do believe this is a fixable problem. And I even believe that the people, and I'm talking about going forward. I'm not talking about going back, because back is a different animal. But I do believe that you can work with DOT. And I'm not saying they will accept stuff that's not correct, but I'm thinking that they will work with you to be able to maybe let you do a minimal amount of stuff to get some of these roads accepted. Because they realize that people have been paying their taxes, and they've been doing the things they should have been, and they didn't know what they were doing when they got into the situation. But one of the other problems that you have is, how do you tell people about where they are on the situation, which we haven't been doing. I think you stamp it on the map. You put it in the deed reference that this is what you're buying. That you're buying, and I'm not an attorney. I don't know who's the city attorney. Okay, she can tell you better than that. But there are ways that you can get it into your legal documents that would be able to handle the problem. So the people we put on notice that this is what they're buying, and they won't be fooled by it. Anybody else got any questions?
Mr. Colson?
Well, I think it's a huge issue. I'm going to say that perhaps I had too simplistic of, or that the original 25% is too simplistic of a guarantee to really work. Something I was just thinking about while I was sitting here is, let's say somebody does $1 million worth of development, they got to put up 25%, $250,000, and it takes 5 or 10 or 20 years. Okay, let's say it's an average 10 years. Well, now they got many millions of dollars tied up in escrow. To Bill's point, it's going to hurt development. One of the important things I see here is that this needs to have something done, but more importantly, we need to make sure we fix it right. I'm not sure that we can do that here tonight. There's a host of issues. The one glaring hole that I see in Bill's approach is the fact that the letter that he's referring to, that's fine, but it's on the back end. There's nothing that guarantees that the builder on the front end is actually building at the DOT standards. Now, if we were to enforce something, I'm going to say in the county, to where James Rhodes' department goes out there and oversees these developments while they're taking place and ensures that, in fact, they're being done, then, maybe that's one thing. But absent that, then we're just going by the word of the builder. Some builders' word is just as good as gold. Others, well, they may not tell you the whole truth. And so by the time that the letter from the DOT is being requested, if it even is requested, it could be already too late, because 3/4 of the lots are already sold. You got a homeowners association, but they could have then power to assess from the people that are currently owning, including the builder, a certain amount of monies to fix roads. Let's say it is 12 years or 15 years later. The problem is they're paying for it twice. Did they not have a reasonable expectation when they bought the lot that they were going to have a road that was going to be able to be taken over by the DOT? Which then brings us to the DOT and the reluctance to quickly assume the responsibility of these roads. As I understand it, it is a state law that they do so. But what is to say that if Bill's, I'm taking from his words here, that let's say that there's a reluctance at the top to bring them on quickly. Well, if that filters down, then somebody might be thinking that they're doing their boss a favor by, okay, Bill, we'll come out there and we'll inspect your road. A year later, Bill calls them back and forth, back and forth. Finally, they show up 3 years later, and then they come up with a laundry list of things to do. Bill completes them. What's to say they don't come back and hit them with another laundry list and another laundry list? Of course, I know that would never happen, right, Bill?
Well, that does happen. That is
So-
that's a very typical way, except maybe in Pitt County.
So
Which
the
is
bigger
very
picture,
fortunate.
the bigger picture, as I see, has got to be that in order to address this going forward, what we have here is not going to address it. I'm going to back off of my original statement that the money issue, I felt like that was a good idea, but again, I think it's too simplistic. I think that we need to address it from the standpoint of maybe it ought to be the county's responsibility, because why are we here? Are we not here to try to make the county better and protect the citizens that in the county? And if that's an assumption that gets a positive response, then we need to have inspections from the county to verify that the builders are doing the things along the way such that at the end, there's not a big surprise. And then people get stuck. So, well, I could go on and on, but I think that's the gist of what I have to say. I just think we need to get this right.
Our manager wanted to say something.
I just want to clarify with James on that once a road is designed and it's built, doesn't DOT come out and do a certification that it is built to that standard? Not saying they're going to take it over, but and they sign off on the subdivision plat also certifying that, don't they?
They look at the plans. The certification is given by the project engineer that the roads have been constructed to standards by DOT.
After they're constructed.
Excuse me?
After they're constructed?
After they're constructed.
So at that
And the-
point in time, they meet the DOT standard after.
Exactly.
Okay.
What I was mentioning earlier with the financial guarantee to make the improvements after the final plat is recorded, we require that we get that certification before we release that financial guarantee. So yeah, it's built into the process already.
But you get your certification from the engineer instead of DOT,
From your project engineer.
project engineer. That's the difference. And what I'm suggesting is that you get a certification from DOT that says that the roads are constructed according to their standards and will be accepted once the right amount of people live on the street. That solves some of the problem.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll come forward.
Can I just ask, does the DOT do that now?
Do what?
Do they come in and say that it's okay, that it's met the standard?
No,
Okay,
but
okay.
There's a manual by which the project engineer designs these roads. They're constructed to those
And
standards.
the
So
project engineer, is that the builder's engineer?
that is correct.
Okay. Thank you, that was what I was.
In listening,
And you are,
I'm Woody Jarvis. I'm
With DOT.
district engineer for DOT in
Very good.
Beaufort and
Thank you.
Pitt County. And my office and myself work with the developers in Beaufort and Pitt County and with James and his department and the planning board and with everybody concerned to try to bring our subdivisions onto the state system. We're not reluctant per se to take them. We're throwing around figures, and before we get lost in the figures, if we could back up just a little bit to Mr. Clark's $800,000 subdivision, we have called out a construction figure to be guaranteed by the developer based on the road and not the total price of the subdivision. So when you take the dollars per foot, it does tend to lose some of the meaning. When we think about constructing a road out in the county in a field, we're looking at $500,000 a mile for a road with ditches and pavement and driveways. If we're looking at a subdivision that's some part of a mile, it will be some part of that $500,000 that we're going to ask for 25% of, not the entire cost of the subdivision. We look at subdivisions on a frequent basis. And we usually don't get involved until density is achieved. And density is not how thick-headed we are when we look at it. It's the number of homes, and we're trying to require that subdivision to be sold to the point that there's 2 home sites every 500 feet. 2 houses per 1/10 of a mile. That's what our guidelines call for, to be in line with it being in need of being added to the public system. And why we do that is so that we can keep the highway department out of the development business. We really believe that we don't have state business in a subdivision that's still owned by a developer. So we separate ourselves from that part of the process. When the lots are sold and the houses are built, that's the hardest time that that street is going to see. There's going to be lumber trucks. There's going to be dump trucks bringing gravel. There's going to be concrete trucks, heavy traffic. That is the worst time for that road. So we really want to set our requirements to be beyond the construction phase or the development phase of that piece of property, so that we can be there when it is owned by the citizens that buy the lots and build the houses. We don't want to be there until then. The guarantee that James's folks have come up with would address most of what we're running into with putting streets on the DOT system. If we look at North Carolina versus other states, and we look at taxes, and you know, we've thrown the tax word around, we've thrown real estate taxes around. I just want to be sure that we all understand DOT does not work from real estate taxes. We work from fuel tax and when people buy and trade cars. Those are the funding sources for the highway department. So whether a homeowner is paying property taxes on a DOT maintained street or on a non-DOT maintained street is not part of our funding equation. Our funding equation is people that drive the most pay the most taxes. So we are definitely on the road work, more or less, a pay-as-you-go or a pay-to-drive organization. So just to kind of keep that in mind while we're talking about road additions. As far as checklists, punch lists, bearing in mind that our subdivision standards, we really do leave out one word, and they're our minimum standards. And we rely on the developer or his engineer to draw plans and submit them to be reviewed by the county, by Soil and Water Conservation for drainage, and by us for the mechanics of the traffic components. Are the radiuses big enough? Are the pipes big enough? Will it drain? And we look at those and sign off on that and say this meets DOT minimum standards when the Mylars are recorded. How it goes from there depends on how that piece of land is treated as it is developed. Who puts in the driveways for the individual houses? Who checks that? Who does that? I don't know of anybody with the county, and I certainly don't have the workforce with DOT to take on that part of the inspection. So after those lots are sold, and after that density, that 2 houses per 1/10 of a mile is obtained, after the lots are out of the developer's name and in individual ownership, we get petitioned to look at that subdivision to consider adding it to the system. And what we look at is very general. Are the ditches working? Is the asphalt in one piece? Is everything out here working? are the ditches open? Or is everything in a shape that we can accept it on the system without having to start spending a lot of money to bring it up to our standards as soon as we put numbers on the street? And no, we don't want to go out. We're reluctant to add a project if it needs a lot of work.
I know.
But if it can be brought up to that standard, then we don't try to dance with it. We don't try to issue several different checklists. We try to go ahead and put it on the system. It comes before you and it goes before our board. And it's usually a very smooth process. Now, where we have had trouble, if we issue a punch list and it does not get addressed within a reasonable amount of time, 60 days, 90 days, and we get the same request 2 years later to add this subdivision, there's going to probably be more items on that punch list, because nothing stays the same out on the road with people using it and school buses on it and traffic on it. These things deteriorate. So what we're looking at and what we're trying to do is something that should be important to all of us. And I certainly don't want to dictate, but I did want to try to clear up as much from the DOT point of view as I could.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Johnson, I believe you had a question.
Mr. Chairman, we'll be here tomorrow night this time if we try to do the work of the planning board. We need to let our planning board sift through this issue and then make a definitive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And that would be my recommendation, that we let the planning board do its job.
Mr. Chairman, as liaison to that board, is that not what has happened with this proposal?
Okay, thank you very much. I had Mr. Owens down next to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur somewhat with what Dr. Johnson said, but I want to respond to our gentleman just speaking here. We're aware of the money, where the money comes from that pays the roads, and I appreciate your concern there. But it's also my responsibility to be aware of that man that's paying his ad valorem tax and doesn't get a road in front of his house. We've had a system that has not worked. Debbie wouldn't be here, whether it's this ordinance that we got before us or the one that we've had in the past. I am not in favor of the ordinance that we have here before us. I think something needs to be done to it. Mr. Clark's letter that he sent to us and his remarks here tonight gave me the feeling that I think that we need to go back and revisit this and rework it using the developer, using the landowner, using the state, and using the county. Whether you can call it creaking or creaking or whatever you want to call it. We need to have some resolution with a joint venture to solve the problem that we have that is not being solved. And what we've got right now is not working. And I don't think the ordinance we have before us here tonight would work. And I'd like for James and his planning board, Mr. Chairman, in conjunction with those groups that I just said, come back and maybe try again with another proposal, James. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I just may remind you that you still have your public hearing open.
I know, and as soon as he gets through with these comments, I think everybody has spoken. I'm going to let Commissioner McLaughlin speak, and then Commissioner Ward, and then we will continue the public hearing.
Terrific, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned about the individual, the citizens that are occupying this, the residents, and seeing this road. I've seen some roads being developed over the years, and they've been developed in new subdivisions. But over a period of 6 months, James, and sometimes even a year, these roads are deteriorated. Holes, pop holes, and actually, but I think I heard Bill Clark speak to the issue of having it maintained according to certain standards going forward. And that concerns me. But more importantly than that, I want to hear from legal. We've heard so much talk this evening, but legal, what are your thoughts in terms? I thought what you were saying was a good recommendation. I think Bill kind of adhered to that with some modification. But I want to hear from Janice in terms of what you see going forward in terms of what has been proposed to us tonight by planning board, and what is your rationale?
Well, it's ultimately the decision of this board to implement policies and practices that it believes addresses the situation that's before it. What's before you is a product, the recommendation before this board tonight is a product of staff development in conjunction with the legal department, was put before the planning board for their consideration, consideration of a public hearing at the planning board level, and then approval 6-2, James, as a recommendation for this board to adopt. This board then has the fresh opportunity to consider the recommendation of the planning board, which you have before you, which incorporates the recommendations of staff based upon the information that it had before it at the time, the additional information before you at your public hearing this evening, and the collective wisdom of this board together. Based on all of that, this board can decide whether or not you are satisfied with the recommendation that's before you, whether or not you want additional study or further research and discussion of the issues, or whether you want to act in a totally different way based upon the information that you have now. So that's essentially my assessment of the situation. I believe there is a problem that needs to be addressed, albeit a problem that affects 2.9 miles of road as a serious problem. And we must not forget the 54.4% of the roads are in good condition. So that's just another piece of information to consider before you. I do believe there's a problem. I do believe that it needs to be addressed. And I think you have a wide variety of options of how you can address it in the collective wisdom of this board.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ward.
First, let me say that I'm in complete agreement with the three gentlemen that have said we need to, and sort of what the attorney said, we need to go back and take some of these things that have been said into consideration and take another look. We definitely need something to be done. But Mr. Jarvis, can I ask you a question? You taught me something tonight that I think maybe I might not be the only one that didn't get this, is the fact that once the project engineer says the roads are fine, doesn't mean that you've got 2 homes every 500 feet. And it may be 3 years down the road before that happens, or 10 years down the road if things are not selling very well. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of what the project engineer says meets all the standards, that 3 years later or 4 years later, like you said, moving trucks, other trucks coming in, building some other houses, or whatever it is that's being done, are the things that cause that damage. So when they apply to you after those 2 houses every 500 feet are in place, the roads have deteriorated. And the punch list you were talking about is what, after you all go out and look and say, just like if you built a new house, and they say, I want this done or this done, this has to be done before we can take it over. Is that kind of the right scenario?
Yes, ma'am, that's very close.
Okay. I don't want to be just close. I want to be right, Mr. No, I'm teasing. But
well, you're right.
The punch list, then how many, if you may not know the exact number, and I've got all the percentages that James sent, and we got them earlier to look at, of the roads that are in poor, horrible, sad to be living out there. How many are there out there that right now came and said, we're ready, and you all went out and looked and said, no, here's your punch list? First, who'd you give that punch list to?
We give the punch list to either the developer or the homeowner that expresses an interest in
the
the
one
absence.
homeowner?
Well, they usually represent a group.
Okay,
And
but it may not be an organized homeowners association.
that is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And the reason I was asking about that was because I live in probably one of the oldest, I don't even think they call them subdivisions back there in the city of Greenville. And our homeowners association, we aren't assessed anything. We are an organization that has the, whatever you call it, it's not an ordinance or the covenant or whatever it is you write, saying what can be done, like you can't add something on to another house and rent part of it out as an apartment, things like that. Covenants, what is it?
Covenants.
Restrictive covenants. And we're one of the oldest homeowners associations, so there's no accessing money, and I don't think many of our our subdivisions in the county have that kind of homeowners. But the organization of a homeowners association, I'm going to tell you, can save you a lot of grief. So all I'm saying is I'm in favor of us going back to the drawing board, taking some of these things into consideration, clarifying a little bit clearer about what a homeowners association is going to mean, and to get the subdivision people to understand it. And then when they come talk to you, they're organized, and I think that's just one component of something that we can look at. Lots of good things in this. James, thank you very much for putting this together for us, and I'm kind of proud of you all and us too, also looking to move forward on this, but I'll hush.
The only commissioner that hasn't spoken is Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in the interest of procedure, we can't take any action until the public hearing is closed.
Right.
So I just suggest that we move on with the public hearing and let those other people speak.
Suggest as soon as Commissioner Ward had made her comment, she's made her comments.
Well, I wanted my turn.
So, I know you wanted your turn.
Okay, thank you.
So we will continue. Thank you. You may be seated. We will continue with the public hearing. Is anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance?
Mr. Chairman, you've got a Wayne Mead signed up.
Please come forward. State your name and your address.
I think I might be first and after me. By the way, can I have as much time as Mr. Clark?
Well,
No, I'm kidding.
we don't really have a time limit on a public hearing like this.
The rules say 5 minutes, but you may lengthen it
Okay.
at your discretion.
That was a joke, I'm sorry. A couple of things I guess I'd like to
Excuse me,
say.
sir, if you don't mind, move to the mic, please.
Oh, sorry. Okay, my name is Wayne Meads. I live at 1302 Fantasia Street in Greenville. I have some real estate interest in some of the subdivisions that are the topic of conversation tonight. A couple of things I feel like I'd like to say up front, because there may be some misunderstanding. Although a number of these roads may be in good condition, I suspect none of them would be accepted by DOT as they are. Because, not only, they don't just look at the roadway, they look at the shoulders, they look at the ditch, they look at the driveway tile. It's the whole picture. So even though you might say, well, this is a pretty good road, it can't be accepted. They do a punch list, somebody have to spend money. So that's where we are on virtually all of these. One other thing I guess I'd like to say preliminary is, excuse me, homeowners associations in Willow Run, Windsor, Brook Valley, lots of other places work. They will not work in the lower income groups. They won't enforce them. They won't collect the money. It's just a paper exercise. It'd be nice if it would, but it's been tried and it doesn't happen. So now I'll get to my little thing I wrote up. I said, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I appear before you this evening to ask you to protect those that are unable to protect themselves. With few exceptions, the folks who end up owning subdivision lots have invested most of the funds they have available for housing. They don't have the financial wherewithal to maintain the roads, much less bring them up to standards to meet DOT requirements. Neither do they have the financial resources to sue developers and force them to comply with the promises they made when they signed the final plat. I looked at a final plat earlier tonight. It's at least a half a dozen officials who signed these things, ranging from the county manager to, the owner to various ones that anybody buying a lot would think, oh yeah, this is, there's not going to be a problem here because I say I will maintain that road until it's accepted. Well, obviously, that has not been working. It would be wonderful if property owners could count on the good intentions and promises made by developers, but if that were sufficient, as someone else said earlier, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. What we're talking about is risk avoidance or risk sharing. I understand Mr. Clark's concerned about the unending obligation of a bond. I don't have a solution for that. What I can say is, though, that unless that developer has skin in the game until the end, he'll lose interest. And the homeowners will be stuck with the bag. Now, unless the county is willing to accept responsibility for these roads, I don't think that's going to happen. You know, you either leave it with the developer. Now, he's taking the risk when he decides to develop. Now, he can minimize that some by phasing. He didn't have to go put 2 miles of road in. He can phase it. He can say, okay, well, he puts his finger up, says we got a certain amount of interest. You can be wrong, but at least he's got some idea of the demand. And he doesn't have to go out and launch and put all the roads in. The roads can be accepted by phase. You'll probably go in some subdivisions and you'll see a sign that says state road maintenance ends here. The road keeps going. But I've been in and around construction for a long time. I'm a professional engineer by training. All of your county projects that you do, your big projects, require performance bonds, and there's a reason for that. You know, I mean, it's in fact, it's a state law. You have to get performance and payments bonds because otherwise things happen, bad things. So I don't know what the solution is, and I'm going to regret this, but I will volunteer to serve on a committee if somebody needs a consumer's point of view. One other thing, to the developer who says this requirement will stop development, I say that ain't so. Yes, it will increase development cost. You know, the same argument was probably used when the county started requiring these roads to be built to state standards. You know, if you go back far enough, you had dirt roads. Some counties still do that. You'll find dirt roads in developments. But when the county said, okay, you're going to have to build them to state standards, I'm sure a lot of people felt like, oh man, that's going to kill it. We're not, development's going to stop. We're not going to have any more projects. Well, it didn't, and it won't. And if we put this guarantee in place, it won't kill development either. There's a saying, pay me now, pay me later. I say pay me now. Let the developer and the purchaser, the person that buys that lot from the developer, he's going to bear the cost of whatever the developer had to spend. Let them pay the upfront price because it's going to be cheaper to do it that way than if you don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this recommendation? Okay, is anyone here who would like to speak against this recommendation? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I spoke, but I didn't get my question answered. That's why I had my hand up.
Okay. So would you like to ask your question now?
Yes, I wanted to ask Mr. Rose, what guarantee does the homeowner have that DOT is going to come and take over that subdivision after it's established? Most of the time, when we get reports from DOT, they're announcing projects that they have already had money allocated for, and they can't give you no answer on new projects that is of interest to a lot of times the citizens of a certain area. They come up here and report those projects to us. And your projects are previously chosen, ain't they, before they're announced like that?
We choose them before we present them, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Reverend Hammond, to answer your question, the guarantee is by virtue of that block that's signed on the final plat that the developer says that he will maintain those roads until the time DOT takes them over. That's the closest thing we have to a guarantee right now. And without the financial guarantee, it may just stop with that signature.
Okay, I think that we have talked about this for over an hour now. Let me make a recommendation. And I think this recommendation is consistent with what some of you have already said. What I would like for us to do, because I agree, I don't think we are ready, this board is ready to make a decision tonight. This issue is too complicated, and I want us to make the right decision, a balanced decision that will protect the homeowners and will also encourage developers to continue developing in our county. We need both. So what I would like to do is to form a subcommittee. Several years ago, we had an issue with fox hunting, and we formed a subcommittee comprised of the interested parties, and they came back to us with a reasonable recommendation. And since then, we haven't had a whole lot of issues with that. So I think it would be good for us to follow that same approach here. I would suggest, and we can change this any way you would like, because I'm just suggesting, that the goal of this committee would be to develop a recommendation that would come back to this board, of course, for approval, that would guarantee streets and subdivisions are built and maintained to DOT standards until taken over by DOT, and that we would do that in a way that is acceptable to developers and that it fully protects homeowners from street maintenance liability. That would be kind of the goal of this subcommittee. I would also further suggest that this subcommittee be comprised of 2 homeowners, interested homeowners, and James, I know that some have already expressed some concerns from some specific developments, and I would think it would be good to ask some of those to serve. We've already had 1 volunteer this evening. Also, 2 developers. I think it would be great for Bill to serve on that committee as a developer, and then another developer, maybe an engineer and a surveyor that represents these developers, that does the work for the developers, DOT representative Woody Jarvis, and also, James, as you and I discussed earlier, it would probably be good to have a couple of members from the planning board, because they have already gone through this issue and have come up with this recommendation this evening. So I don't want them to think that we are just bypassing their recommendation altogether. And then I think we should have 1 commissioner. And Tom, you have expressed a lot of interest in this. I think he would be good to serve on that. And then have our planning department and our legal department to serve this committee as advisors. So that would be my recommendation. And again, I think it's pretty consistent with what some of you have said this evening. So what is your pleasure?
You haven't mentioned landowners.
Put that in a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I mentioned homeowners.
But not landowners. They are the people who sell the land to the developers for the whole business.
Okay.
So they are very, very important.
This was my suggestion. It can be changed, altered, added to, or deleted any way this board decides. So now tell me, what is your pleasure?
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And I'll second it.
Okay,
You're
so you-
moving Mr. Owens.
Okay, so is your motion what I just said,
Yes.
and your second?
Is what you just said.
Okay, and you know what that is, Madam Clerk, if you don't have it written right here. Now, would you like to modify that, Mr.
Only
James?
thing I want is some landowners on it. To me, they are very important people.
Okay, fine. We can add some landowners, and probably the biggest landowner in the whole state is Eugene James, so put him on.
Not true.
Yes, sir.
But I want to remember,
I understand.
the
Don't
Pitt
the
County,
developers own the land?
Well,
Most
but
of
he is saying they buy it from a landowner, and he wants to go back a step further, right?
yes.
Okay, I'm okay. Whatever.
Mr. Chairman.
Are we going to put
I
them
certainly
liable for the roads?
would concur with what
They want to
the
put the
gentleman,
kind of the people on
the
it. That's
last,
what you
the
got to
last
worry
gentleman
about.
that
No,
spoke.
I want the landowner
What's your
to
name,
take
sir?
responsibility.
Mr. Wayne Mead.
Mr. Wayne
Yeah.
Mead.
Yes,
Mr. Wayne, Mr. Mead, you spoke very vividly about the fact of representing or having a concern for the low to moderate income. And I think that's very meaningful, because we do have a lot of subdivisions that are comprised of low to moderate income that just cannot afford what we're talking about. And I think you being on that committee, and you're going to voice that concern, and I think that the concern needs to be voiced very strongly, if that's part of your reason of being on that committee.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Everybody understand the motion? Okay, everybody understands it? Then let's vote on it. Very good.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to say one other thing about homeowners associations. A lot of the homeowners associations I'm aware of, you're not assessed any amount of money. You meet, decide on dues. I am not in an overly affluent community. I won't say that, subdivision. Our dues are $25 a year, and you don't have to pay the $25 to be a member of the homeowners association. That's just to give us a little working money to replace the light bulbs at the entrance. But we are pretty powerful at getting some things done when we go before groups to talk to them about things they're doing or not doing relative to, so the homeowners association is not always a burden to the homeowners, and, it's not you do not have to pay an amount of money to be a part of your homeowners association if it's organized. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank everyone who came tonight and voiced their opinion. We really appreciate it and we value it.
And Mr. Chairman, just so I'm clear, I suppose you want representatives brought back for this board to concur with at a later date.
Yes, you can work with our manager,
Okay.
and he can work with me, and we will develop a committee and then come back to us for official appointments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully, our other agenda items won't take quite that long. We will continue with our public hearings. The next one is an amendment to the Pitt County Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Ordinance, and Mr. Rhodes, you're going to present that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is fairly simple in that this is, of course, in response, the county has been authorized delegation of the requirements of the soil erosion and sedimentation control regs for the state. We handle those responsibilities here in the county as well as for 5 of the municipalities. We received that delegation back in the mid-'80s. In turn, things change from time to time. We have 3 things that are changing in the state's model ordinance. We need to reflect that in ours. The first one would be the mandatory requirements for ground cover whenever things are disturbed out in the field, such as building a subdivision. The requirement now is 21 calendar days. It clears up some of the other nuances that were in the previous language. The second one is just to reflect the change of the division. It was Division of Land Resources, now it's Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources. And then finally, to acknowledge the requirement of self-inspections by the individual that's developing the property. And it stipulates all the various requirements of this self-reporting. It has to be on site when our staff goes out to review to make sure that they've been handling these self-inspections and monitoring requirements. So with that, those are the 3 primary requirements, and we'll open this up for a public hearing as well.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I declare the public hearing open. Is anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this change?
Mr. Chairman, no one has signed up.
Okay, is anyone here who would like to speak against this change? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move we adopt this proposal.
Mr. Chairman,
I second it.
Mr. Rose had mentioned that the effective date on this being June 3rd. Did you announce that?
No, I was going to mention that as far as the requirements or the recommendation tonight. We do have to take this before the Sediment Control Commission at the state level. They won't meet until mid-next month. We're recommending a June 3rd effective date.
Okay, did you include that in your motion?
It was.
Okay.
And I seconded
second.
it with that inclusion.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's vote on that. Thank you. We have another public hearing. This is for a conditional use permit, and Mr. Rhodes.
I think the board is very familiar with these standards that we go through each time. It seems like we've had a number of these requests for residential daycares, and again, this will need to be treated in a quasi-judicial procedure, and with that, similar to a court situation, we're here to establish the facts. Those that wish to speak need to be placed under oath, and no ex parte communication allowed, and any decisions will need to be appealed to the Superior Court. So with that, we'll ask the clerk to swear in anyone that wishes to speak tonight.
Anyone here that would like to speak on this particular item, please come forward and be sworn in. You do not have to speak, no. But if you speak, you have to be sworn in.
We'll cover you.
Okay.
Okay, the conditional use permit tonight is for residential daycare, and it's located at 3147 King Farm Roads, and that is in Sawtooth Oaks Subdivision. This is not in a manufactured home park. However, Tucker Farm still owns this particular tract, and therefore you see a letter in there from Tucker Farms that indicates that they have, Ms. Johnson has permission to do such. Just a reminder, residential daycares, more than 2 children, but less than 9 children within that residence receiving the care. Ms. Johnson has requested operation between 6 a.m. and 12 midnight. This, of course, is the site you're looking at. It has road frontage right on King Farm Road here, and fairly rural all around it. And you can see the existing land use is primarily farmland around it, except for some of the residential lots right along the roadway and on Sawtooth Drive. 3 things that we typically mention with these types of uses: security fencing is required, locational requirements, and also the hours of operation that I just mentioned prior to this. And we also have to go through the criteria. The first one being, will this site materially endanger public health or safety? We feel like it will not endanger that. Will it injure the values? We do not think it will. As the second or the third one here indicates, it's in harmony with the area, and it is within a residential dwelling within a predominantly residential area. Is it in conformity with the land use plan and other plans adopted by the county? We believe that it is. So as far as staff recommendations, 2 for tonight: 1 to acknowledge that the permit application is complete, and the other that would allow the use of this property, this land use on this property, and to be operated between 6 a.m. and 12 midnight. So with that, public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this? You may speak. Come and give your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Quayne Johnson, and I do own a 4-star child care center in Farmville, North Carolina, and we are wanting to expand, so that was the reasoning for the adding the home center to our home.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of?
There's nobody signed up, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone here who would like to speak against? If not, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion approval.
Motion and second. Let's vote.
May I ask James a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
James.
Yes, sir.
You have a 6-foot fence. When did you go up to 6 foot?
It has been that way since the ordinance was in place.
It has been.
It sure has.
I see them around. They don't look 6 foot to me. I mean, I don't see why they're 6 foot. They're bigger today. Okay.
Vote. Vote.
I voted.
Confirmed then. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone signed up? Public addresses to the board?
Yes, sir, we do. We have I'm Bobby Hardison.
Very good. Please come forward. State your name and your address.
I'm Bobby Hardison. I represent Mayfield Drive Subdivision. We are a 2/10 mile street in the what do you call it? The jurisdiction it's not claimed.
The ETJ.
NTJ. Excuse me. I've been working with the subdivision for 2 years, I'm just a retired part salesman, but trying to get us so we can get our street DOT spec. And we have about 4 houses that have people who do not have an income able to, they said, to put forth any money. So I had contacted DOT and I've received a letter back from them. I have a punch list if anybody would like to see that. And I've had bids on paving and so forth from contractors, but nothing real current as far as that. And what I was trying to do is to get you to enforce the state statute that permits you to loan money to a subdivision like us to have our street done and then assess us back, over a period of 3 or 4 years, something to pay you back. Our subdivision only would need about $50,000, possibly $60,000, unless things have changed considerably in the last 12 months. Of course, I realize it would be 2014 before any money would be available at all, if it is, but that's the reason I'm here, is trying to solicit you all, if you would, to enforce that statute and put some money in the budget for 2014.
Okay.
If you have questions, I'll try and answer them.
Any questions?
But I've dealt with Mr. Jarvis, Mr. Pittman, the Secretary of State's office, everybody you can name I've talked to.
Okay. Commissioner Coulson.
Janice, are you familiar with what he's referring to?
I am.
Okay.
There is a state statute that allows for an assessment process. This would relate to those subdivisions whose roads are in poor condition and there is no developer available to continue his or her responsibility for the maintenance of those roads until they're accepted by the Department of Transportation. Mayfield is a subdivision like that. I think you've also heard from residents from Woodmore or Woodmore Farms that are subdivisions like that. Everything you've discussed today are really prospective approaches to prevent the problem from happening again.
Right.
But this gentleman is referencing the statute that allows the county, if the Board of Commissioners so accepts a petition signed by a certain percentage of residents within that subdivision, to advance budgeted funds for the road improvement. The road improvements would be supervised by DOT, and then your tax office would assess back plus interest the cost of that road improvement back to each homeowner in the neighborhood. That's a process that, to my knowledge, the county has never used before, but it's a tool available if you are presented with an appropriate petition.
Well, if you don't mind, another question for Janice. So let's say that they were to do that. What's the guarantee that the DOT would take action quickly?
Well, again, there would be no guarantee, but the Department of Transportation would be responsible for overseeing and supervising the work that's being done. So it would be very likely that since they are supervising the project and assuring what work needs to be done, that it would be done to their satisfaction, and there would really be no basis for them not to accept it. So there's no true guarantee, but the likelihood that DOT would not accept it after having gone through that process would be very slim, I would think.
Right, you'd want to coordinate with DOT to make sure they would take it over. I've dealt with this program in other counties. The county does have to allocate a certain amount of money for the assessment program. In one program I worked with, at that time, the statutes could have changed since that time. At that time, it said that 75% of the property owners, representing 75% of the lineal front footage of the road, had to sign the petition to be willing to be assessed. And that does become a lien against the property. So if you sell a property, then it has to be satisfied as such. And then, like Janice said, you do pay interest over the period of time. Or you could pay it all up front if you were capable of doing that with no interest, depending upon, but the county would need to develop a program. We would also need to identify within the county's budget process or through our available revenues where that pot of money is going to come from. If we take it from fund balance, that then lessens the amount of fund balance, lessens our fund balance percentage. There's one or two other options where funds could be utilized, but we'd really need the board, if he wants to seek this out and bring back a policy or recommendation to bring that before you, so that we know how much money, how many subdivisions, is it first come, first served, first one in the door, first one to meet all the conditions, because obviously you have to certify the petitions and then work with DOT and whatnot.
Okay. Commissioner James.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good thing, and it's the way to go. This is not old to Pitt County. We did it out for waterworks in the area when they were developing that. We paid, and they're paying us back right now, Mr. Manager, if you recall. We did it for Burroughs Welcome. We put in $2.5 million there for a pumping station, the same way that we're talking about here. Now, all these, and we are able to do this. This is some way that we can help these citizens that really need help. They'll never get it unless we can do that. And if he gets 75% of these people to sign it, they will be able to, those that are able to pay, they can go ahead and pay it out, their part. We do that on a lot of things, creeks, drainage, and all of this stuff. We have to sign for it. But I think this is one of the ways that we can help get these subdivisions up to par. They are willing to pay. They are not asking it for free. They're willing to do their part. And all we've got to do is to just take and cooperate with them and help them out. And I think if we don't do something like this to help people like this, that's what we're not losing anything, in other words. And we'll never get these subdivisions paved unless we can do something like he is suggesting.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have on file a petition with 100% signatures except for the one vacant lot, which would not perk anyway, owned by Mrs. Spate, the developer's widow. So every other
Where is
person
that
who
petition?
lives there has already signed it, and your lawyer has it.
So you have it.
I don't believe that I've received it, but
She's
I'm not
our
saying-
lawyer.
I'm the county's lawyer, and I don't know that I have the petition. Do you, James?
We will call it a request, not a formal petition. We really haven't worked out the details as
Okay.
far how to bring this vehicle along, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I like Mr. James, want to commend this gentleman and his group for wanting to do something for themselves. And I'd like for James to investigate this and bring it back to us.
Okay, fine.
With
Everybody
our
okay with
attorney,
that?
Mr. Manager.
Just want to
Work
point
it out.
something out too, that if they enter into that agreement, if I'm correct, and they sell their house and move, they have to satisfy the lien
Yes.
before they can move. So we won't lose any money on something
Right.
like this.
Anyway, they're going to
Right.
investigate all the details and come back to us with a proposal or with, to see what we need to do, where we can go from here. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, has anyone else would like to address us? Okay, we will now move on to our items for report, and the first one is our manager's report. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few things to report to you. The next meeting dates for the month of May will be May 6th and May 20th at 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. respectively. Item B, just to remind you about the annual breakfast at Shepherd Memorial for elected officials on the 29th at 8 a.m. Item C, we have been contacted by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and have been asked to consider hosting the 2015 annual summer conference, and this would be actually the summer in which Commissioner Glenn Webb would be sworn into office as president of the association. And I need to be able to send them a letter, basically like we did in planning for the 2010 conference that we hosted 2.5 years ago. So if the board is in agreement to that, we need a motion.
So what is your pleasure?
So moved.
Hey,
What's the
I
cost
got a
associated with
question.
it?
Okay.
In 2010, we kind of piggybacked with the cities hosting of the League of Municipalities in 2009. Both, we donated $10,000 to them, they donated $10,000 to us. We also got contributions from the community. I believe we raised $39,000 or $40,000 in local donations. It all depends what we can raise locally through those type of donations from industry and suppliers and so forth. There will be a cost. The biggest cost, I would say, is staff time in planning and executing the conference. We did a great job, but it's very exhausting, but it's also very beneficial and very rewarding at the same time. But it is a big task. I don't want to make it like it's not.
You're the one that's got to do it. Do you recommend it? Because you got the work's going to fall on y'all's shoulders.
Yes, sir, I do. So I smile at Glenn Webb.
Commissioner Ward, did you have a comment?
Well, all I was going to say was I remember the people who really pushed this thing forward, and we do get a lot of money from we get money from the state organization to do the speakers and other things that we don't have to foot the bill for. But I was kind of looking up over who was co-chair. Were you co-chair last time?
Mike Taylor and
Yeah.
Melanie Bryan.
I'm looking at Mike.
Tom.
Okay, Dwayne, are you ready? Anyway, I think there are a lot of people involved, and I think if I don't know if you've shared this with your staff or not. I'd like to hear kind of what they.
Yeah, they're aware of it. We've talked about it. They're excited. No. No, cautiously excited.
That does not look like the face of excitement.
I'm joking when I say that.
Well, we got some wonderful coverage back, and a lot of people from the state were just very pleased with what we did and that sort of thing. But it's a big job.
Back in 2010, we were kind of planning in the dark because we'd never done it. We were kind of feeling our way through it. We do have the game plan from 2010, so it'd be a whole lot easier in terms of executing the plan. We're not having to feel our way out through it. And also, association is there for us. They're booking the speakers and the bands and the different venues that are employed in this event.
I think it would be a great thing for our community. It was a very positive move the last time we had it. I know that it requires a lot of time and dedication, but our staff did a tremendous job in pulling this thing off. The last time we had all kinds of compliments, and I appreciate all that they did and appreciate all that they are going to do.
Think about the motels, and all the money's going to be spent, all
That's
the extra
correct.
sales taxes going to be coming to Pitt County.
And I believe at the
think
last
it's good.
convention, even though it was a lot of staff time and a lot of commitment of people, I don't think it really cost any out-of-pocket money for the county. Or did it?
There were the 10,000 that
Okay.
There was some costs.
Yeah,
I'm not
but
gonna
it
say
wasn't-
But it wasn't anything
wasn't
like what
that
we
much
thought.
because everyone. Anyway, Commissioner McLaughlin.
Yes, sir. And another thing I remember, it enhances the visibility of this area, this region, being the Pitt County, the hub of the East. It sure promotes that well-being. So I want to second Commissioner Owen's motion. He made a motion. I want to second it, that we move forward with this.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll yield to the wisdom of the board, and I do appreciate all the work that we're putting on the staff, and I do somewhat apologize for that, but it was my feeling that if I was going to be sworn in as president of this association, the first one from our county since the 70s, that the economic benefit should land here on my swearing in as opposed to somewhere in the Piedmont or the coast.
Good. Commissioner Johnson.
I'm still concerned about the cost to the taxpayers by way of our budget. And if the county manager can assure us that we'll not be raising taxes to pay for it, then
No, I can assure you won't be raising taxes to pay for it. The costs the benefits will outweigh the costs in numerous ways to hold the conference here in Pitt County.
So
Okay,
Guilford
we have
County is expecting to bring in $750,000 for the conference that they're hosting this year.
Very good.
This
We
is
have a
plus.
motion. We have a motion and a second. Let's vote. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
The next two items, D and E, are just to make an announcement that the EMS has applied for two different grants. One is to Firehouse Subs for $15,000, no match. The next one is to the Vidant Medical Center Foundation. That's actually for $5,000, not $50,000. Bring that to your attention. Item F, the ABC board staff has contacted me regarding the new store they're building behind CVS on Arlington near Fire Tower, and as part of that construction process, they are devising a plaque to put inside the store, and would like to know whether the board would like to have its names on that plaque. I guess the board could either go one way or the other. If you do want to have it on there, you opt not to, let the clerk I know, and we'll make sure it's not on there. Or they could just have the ABC board members' names on there and not the county commissioners. So need some direction from the board on how you would like to handle that.
I say let's just let the clerk know if we want it on there or not.
Okay. Next item, G, are the current boards that we're advertising for as an organization. We've got the Region Q Workforce Development Board, Aden Planning Board, Pitt County Board of Adjustment, and the Greenville Board of Adjustment. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Very good, thank you. Our next item for report is our tax collections report, and Kathy Booker is going to present that.
Good evening. The March 2013 combined collection rate of 95.10 for taxes on real and personal property and registered motor vehicles is slightly below the combined rate 1 year ago of 95.30. We continue to pursue all outstanding taxes through the enforcement remedies provided by the North Carolina general statutes, and we do pursue all years on all delinquents.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Booker? If not, do I have a motion that we accept the report?
I say move.
Motion second, let's vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hammond. Thank you. The next item is another item for report, and that is our ABC quarterly report, and Ms. Campbell is going to present that.
Good evening. I promise not to take up too much of your time. While he's getting that, I wanted to touch on a couple of housekeeping issues that I had. I'm a representative of the North Carolina Association of ABC Boards, and I would like to thank you all for allowing us to use the auditorium to give our educational program, the ABC 101. I think several of you attended that, and I just wanted to thank you for letting us use the auditorium.
Thank you.
And today, earlier in our meeting, our board meeting at the ABC Board, we discussed the distribution schedule, and I wanted to kind of put it out there for inquiry if it would be a problem rather than us doing a $275 for each quarter. I know this past year we did $100,000 the first quarter and then $450 the second quarter. We were thinking maybe to do the statutory 3.5% the first 3 quarters, and at the end of the year make up the difference to equate the $1.1 million. So I just wanted to...
I guess my question to that would be, Mr. Manager, how would that impact our cash flow?
There will not be a problem. We can work with the ABC board on that, and as long as at the end of the fiscal year, that June 30th, we get 100% of the distribution that the board is requesting or has made notice to the ABC board that you're expecting that we receive it, then that's the important thing.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's what our plan is, and we just wanted to have those funds available to do that.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's get started. On the first slide here, we have our gross sales for the second quarter. They were $4,497,206, which was a $68,765 increase over last year. Next, I have a sales comparison. It shows the second quarter of 2012 versus 2013. In 2012, the sales were $4,428,441. In comparison, in 2013, they were $4,497,206. For our second quarter distribution retention, the change in net assets before profit distribution was $676,215.28. The required distributions for the quarter ended 12/31/2012 was $112,319.07, and we took additional working capital of $337,680.93 to make up the distribution of $450,000. The balance that we retained for the second quarter was $226,215.28. The total distribution for the second quarter, the beverage price support, which is paid on a monthly amount to Pitt County, was $15,380.09. The $450,000 profit distribution comes to a total of $465,380.09. Year-to-date distribution, or change in net assets before the profit distribution, was $776,215.28. The actual distribution to the county was $100,000 for the first quarter. The second quarter distribution of $112,000 plus the $337 to come to a total of $550,000 through the end of the second quarter. The balance retained, as I said before, was $226,215.28. That's basically all I have for our year-to-date now. Is there any questions?
Continue to make money.
I'm working very hard at doing that. We can do that.
Good. With that thought in mind, how is the third quarter looking?
The third quarter ended up pretty good. We haven't got our actual books back from the accountant yet, but third quarter was up a little.
Close to what the second quarter was?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So we've already cut a check to the county. No, excuse me, we're doing that this week for the $275,000.
Okay. The reason I was asking that, and I'm very sincere about this, I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel, but, you know, we've made a steady progress with what we've brought in as far as the ABC Board is concerned. And it's been how long has it been since we increased?
A couple of years at least.
A couple of years. Anyway, I'd like for the board and y'all to be thinking about, is there any chance or any opportunity that we could look at an increase to be added to this year as far as the distribution is concerned? And I'd just like to put that out there as a thought.
Right.
And don't mind you taking it back and talking about it and with the members that are there. I just, think that may be something that we would like to see happen.
Okay.
That's a good
Thank you.
suggestion. Any further questions?
Well, if I can add to what Commissioner Ward just said, serving on that board, and I want to commend Teresa for the fine job that she's doing in terms of listening attentively to what the commissioners' concerns are. And I think she's been very proactive in terms of hearing that and adhering to it. So I thank Commissioner Ward that, based upon what she's recommended at the beginning of this, that we will offset paying the county until the end. It's a possibility, and I think a strong possibility, that we may be getting more money given to the county at the end based upon the formula that we're using. So,
good.
Thank you.
I think if I've interpreted what Ms. Ward is saying, she's talking about the July 1 budget for fiscal year 13-14, but we would need to know, you as a board would need to know how much you're going to plan on receiving the distribution if we're going to up it, because we would need to expect to receive that. My understanding is with the new store being built and that they're getting a bank loan on that, and also the closing the existing store in Arlington and closing the Treetop store, the cost savings through that they'll be able to next year meet the debt service on the new store, all the operating costs, pass at least the $1.1 million to Pitt County, as well as return additional monies to working capital. So that's why I'm looking at working with Ms. Campbell to increase the 1.1 to a higher number.
Yes. Okay. We
Thank
will
you.
work
Thank
towards
you.
that. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item for report is our financial report, and Mr. Holder is going to present that.
Mr. Chairman, typically you'll make a motion to accept.
I'm
the
sorry,
ABC.
may I
I'd
hear
like
a
to
motion
move
that
that
we
we
accept that
accept it.
report? Second?
second.
Okay, let's vote. Thank you, Madam Attorney.
Oh,
It's yours. It's your shot.
okay. Good evening. Good evening. Included in your agenda packet is our monthly financial report for the period ending March 31st, which represents 3/4 of our fiscal year. I am pleased to report that we continue to track well against our pre-established targets. Our revenues have been collected, and again, this is at 75% of the fiscal year completed. Our revenues have been collected at a rate of 80.6% of anticipated, and we've spent 71.5% of our appropriations for the year through 75% of the fiscal year. A couple of things that I will note, keep in mind on page 2 of your report, our contingency budget is currently sitting at $78,819, and just remember we started at $300,000 for the fiscal year. The second thing that I would point out, and I do this somewhat tentatively, but try to look ahead at where we may end up by year end based on our trend from prior fiscal year. And just a quick projection based on prior year performance. If we continue to operate the way we have and what was typical in last fiscal year's last quarter, we could end up as much as $3 million revenues ahead of expenditures. If we were to do that with our fund balance, we could be looking at potentially adding as much as 1% on top of what our current fund balance is at 13.69%. So
good news.
That's good, and that would indicate good movement, particularly as we continue to be on particular watch lists for credit agencies and such. So
that's an excellent report, and knowing that you are very conservative in your reporting, we will be expecting more than that.
Oh, Lord. Hey, Jim, he's about lowering taxes.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to note, too, we could, with the new tax and tag program being rolled out by the state, we could even receive additional dollars in revenues. They're not currently budgeted through that in this last quarter of this year. So I think we are, from a revenue picture, we are well positioned to continue to not well increase, but gradually increase our fund balance, moderately increase our fund balance percentage.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept that report?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Let's vote. Thank you. I have a motion to approve the item for consent.
I second it.
Motion second. Let's vote. Thank you. And our items for decision, the first one is the consolidated agreement between the State of North Carolina and Pitt County Health Department. Is Dr. Morrow here? No. Well, this is a standard agreement that he does every year. So, okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's vote.
Second.
Thank you. We also have a grant application. The second item there, Mr. Excuse me. Mark, confirm, please. And we're highly honored to have Mr. Scott Pogue here this evening to present this to us. This is for a grant. Present your story. Present your story.
Good evening. This is for a North Carolina Rural Center Building and Reuse application for Project Sequence. We've applied for these grants many times before. It's going to be in the amount of $60,000. It requires a 5% cash match from the local unit of government, which would not exceed $3,000, which is in the Development Commission's budget.
And our board approved this at our last meeting. So
yes,
what
sir.
is your plan?
Motion
second. Let's vote. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Holder, our annual audit contract.
Move we approve it.
Motion to approve. Second. Any questions? Let's vote. Thank you. The next item is a motion or a item for decision to discontinue the building inspection services for Winnable, and Mr. Rhodes is going to present that.
Yes, sir. We've had a request from the town of Winterville for the discontinuation of our current interlocal agreement with the town for inspection services. And of course, this applies not only within the city limits, but also within the ETJ. So you can see on the map here, it's both the white and blue shaded areas that extend a good way, really connecting the jurisdictions of Greenville and Ayden. So it would involve that entire jurisdiction as far as folks coming in to receive building permits, certain trade permits would, in this case, if this goes through tonight, Winterville would establish its own inspections department. And by the way, Mr. Mike Weldon is here tonight. He'll be the new town inspector for the town of Winterville. We have met from the staff perspective, our legal staff, planning, building inspections, along with town officials to try to make this transition as smooth as possible. In your agenda package tonight, you'll see an agreement that's been drafted. Couple of highlights on this. Number one, since the town already has an inspector in place, they're wanting to assume this responsibility fairly soon. Your current interlocal agreement says with a mutual agreement we can discontinue the service at your discretion. Otherwise, it is a 2-year clause in there for these services. First up, again, I mentioned they wanted to move forward as quickly as possible. We're looking at having new plans go before the town for approval. Any building plans would go to them starting May 15th. As part of this responsibility, there are 3 public schools within its jurisdiction. They would need to assume that inspection responsibility for those schools beginning this fall. And then finally, we've got several outstanding or current building projects here within the jurisdiction of Winterville, and we're recommending that those be allowed to continue through our county inspections process through the end of this calendar year, and hopefully that would give the contractors
That's
enough
June
time.
30th, excuse me.
That would allow the contractors enough time to finish those projects. And if not, again, these permits are not transferable. They would have to then go to the town to complete those inspections if they didn't finish it by the end of the year. I would like to note, too, we do have some contractors that are in attendance tonight, too, Mr. Chairman. I think we've mentioned that there may be some concerns or some questions about the transition. But as far as staff's perspective, this agreement tonight is, we believe, would give and afford an opportunity for the contractors to meet their requirements and get from under our permits before transitioning over. So you see the agreement in front of you, and we welcome any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions?
Will it cost us additional money as far as the county is concerned?
It will not cost us additional money, but what it does do, of course, we receive any of the revenues from those permit fees from the folks that are building within the town. So we will not receive those revenues
But it
next
doesn't
year.
any additional cost over.
There are no costs.
Yeah, they don't
Mr. Coulson.
take that on.
Does this mean that if, for whatever reason, it can't get done by the end of the fiscal year, what you're suggesting, and they have to reapply?
Calendar year.
And have, and they have to reapply with the city of Winterville, would they be paying more? Would they be paying twice?
Good question. In fact, the town has not established its fee schedule yet, so can't really get into, how much it would be, what the policy would be by the town. That's really a question to the town at that point.
And the town could exempt them.
Well,
Could.
but might not. Would it be better for us to just maintain it until it comes to conclusion?
That's your discretion.
Does that become a sticky wicket to you?
You don't care.
You don't care.
I serve at your pleasure. So that's your determination. We can provide those services if you'd like. We can continue them as we have done. Or, again, they already have personnel in place there. So I'll turn that over to the new inspector for the town of Winterville to address.
Thank you. I'm Mike Weldon. I am the new building inspector for the town of Winterville. We have looked at different possibilities with our fee schedules. We haven't had it go before our board yet, but everybody that has looked at it has been very pleased with it. We've tried to stay somewhere within the range between what Greenville and Pitt County have been charging for permits. Now, our process is a little different, but basically it comes out about an average of what the two other entities have already had. So we've tried to keep it in that range so that it wouldn't be too far out of context for what they've been paying for in the past. And as far as if they don't get their project finished by the end of the year, we have talked about having possibly a reduced rate for these people, that when they come in, we would probably go out and look at their project, and if they're 3/4 of the way done, of course, we wouldn't think it would be fair for them to pay for a full permit. We would reduce the cost of the permit in half, or whatever we feel would be necessary to help this contractor along.
Well, let me also say that I believe you're going to be discussing your ordinance at your May the 13th meeting.
Yes, sir.
And I would surely suggest that all builders be there to express your concerns and desires directly to the Winnable Council.
Yes, sir.
Second that motion.
Okay, so you've heard the report. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move it to as James requested.
Second motion.
Motion made, second. Any further questions or comments?
Not unless the board wanted to acknowledge the contractors that might be waiting to speak. Sorry.
Well,
And they don't have to.
yeah, you can speak if you would like. This is not a public hearing, but if you want to speak, again, what I would suggest is you'd be at Winnable. They will have a public hearing on the 13th of May.
It's pretty much been a done deal, right?
Well, they've already hired their person.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that, we're just concerned with timing
And that's what's going to be spoken to.
Yeah.
I know Mike, and if it's only going to be one person, and something, if he's out sick, how are we going to get inspection?
You need to ask the Winnable Council that, because they have made this decision. Okay, we've had a motion second. Any further questions or comments? Let's vote. Thank you very much. We also have some appointments to the Pitt Area Transit Board.
Move appoint
I think there are 10 of them listed. Motion to appoint them, second.
I second it.
Any questions? Let's vote. Thank you. That is the last item for decision. We will now have commissioners' comments. Commissioner Hammond, you have any comments?
No, sir.
No comment.
No comment.
No comments.
No, sir.
Johnson, McLaughlin, Mr. Webb?
I'll be attending the
Adjourn.
NCACC Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday in Raleigh. And also today at our ABC board, we reined in $25,000 that we found out was being spent by some organizations not for their intended purpose. That money's going to be reappropriated to East Carolina to help with their alcohol education program that parents and young college students go through. They did a presentation today. Thank you, Mr.
Very good. Have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, let's vote.
All righty.
Thank you, Mr.